This is 40K Today, voted the #1 Warhammer 40K 15-minute magazine-style international podcast on all of Cadia Prime. You know, before the fall.
Welcome to 40K Today. We're going to spend the next 15 minutes talking about the hottest stuff going on in Warhammer 40,000 today. My name is Paul Murphy. Today is July 16th, 2020. I'll be your host with the most for the rest of the week. Let's get ready to go. Our poll question this week is about the painting points listed in the missions for Warhammer 40K 9th edition. In friendly games, will you be using these points to determine victory? You've got one more day to submit your votes. Right now, it's looking like people are going to be really casual with this. What do you think? Let us know by going to the 40K Today Facebook page. We want to hear from you. That leads us into our first segment. It's about painting and a painting tip from Shoshie Bauer from Shoshie's Magnificent Miniature Painting. Say that a couple times. Shoshie doesn't just paint Warhammer stuff. As a matter of fact, she's got some great videos and great tutorials up for all types of miniatures. I'm going to let John take it away for this tip.
Shoshie, welcome back to the show. We're so excited to have you. So you're here.
Shoshie, sorry.
Shoshie, I'm sorry. I'm the worst. Golly gee. So you're here today. We're going to talk about helping some new painters because we think that there's going to be a lot of new people getting excited about miniatures with the release of the new edition of 40K, right? We expect an influx of new people. And painting can be a bit of a daunting kind of task. But what I like to tell people is it's not artistry, it's artisanry, which is it's a skill that you can develop, and it's not necessarily, it doesn't require artistic talent. It just requires, it's kind of like learning how to ride a bike.
Yeah, definitely. It's a craft, and it can be learned. So what I tell new painters, I kind of have 3 tips. The first one is your very first miniature, keep it forever. Don't repaint it, and don't throw it away or strip it or anything like that. Keep it and let that be a measure of how far you've come. Like every time that you feel like you've reached like a new level, compare it to your first miniature. And my second tip is don't compare yourself to other painters. You don't know what kind of like background they have. You don't know how long they've been painting or, what kind of training they've had. So comparing yourself to them is really kind of fruitless, but you should compare yourself to your last miniature. So,
I think that's good advice because what you're doing is you're just trying to be a little better than you were
the last time. Yep.
The last time. And, if you make small improvements, what is the old saying? Journey of 1,000 steps starts with the first one or something like that.
And that brings me to my third tip, which is try to paint a little. If you're a newbie or even if you've been around but you want to improve, try to paint a little bit every day because you have muscles in your hand. And the more that you are working out those muscles and practicing and painting every day, then the more motor control you get, the fine motor control. And also, I always tell people like painting is kind of like a sport, and that these muscles need to be worked out on a daily basis to be good. And I always say Michael Jordan didn't get good at 3-pointers, only shooting on the weekends.
No, that's probably true. Yeah, actually, that's probably more than true.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you think about it like that, it really does make it change. You'll get very good very fast by painting even just 15 minutes a day.
So out of curiosity, would you suggest people start with a certain color palette when they're starting out to make it a little easier on them? Because there are certain colors that are a lot harder to paint with good results than others. I'm thinking the yellows, the whites, even black sometimes. But like your blues, purples, reds can be a little more forgiving. Is that true?
I don't know about that. I mean, that's a really tricky question because what I don't tell people to focus on color. I tell people to focus on painting what you like. Like if you're going to paint an army and you're going to paint like how many of those minis, pick something that you are jazzed about,
Right.
And,
something that gets you through those,
yeah.
The 29th guy in the unit or something like that, right?
My first army, and I'm still working on it, is some Eldar. and I got that box set, the one that they have. And every time I paint a new one, I am excited about it, and
That's cool.
that's what keeps me into it.
I can see you getting excited about painting some Harlequins, actually.
Exactly. That's exactly why. Yeah.
I could definitely see that. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit. So if let's say you're a little more experienced and you're not a brand new player, do you have any tips for starting a new army or sort of breaking down the process into bite-sized pieces?
Yeah, I actually learned this from Kenny from Next Level Painting, and he suggests, or somebody like that. But I get a strip of cardboard, and let's say you've got a unit of Space Marines, tack them to the cardboard, and then paint them assembly line, and that will get things done very quickly.
And when you say assembly line, you mean like, say you're painting, they have like a lot of them have like little knapsacks or something that you're painting them brown with. You just paint all the knapsacks on all the models.
Yes.
Right. And then you move on to the next thing. Next thing you're going to paint is all the bolt guns, right?
All of even in all the same color, like all the
Yeah.
black, all the blue. Now we're going to do all of the red.
Okay, very cool. Well, I think that's some good ways to get your models on the table painted and get those 10 points that everybody is talking about.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
And finished, not perfect. That's my favorite thing, is just get them done. You'll get better the more you do. Don't worry about perfection.
And you can always go back and improve models over time, right? You can set them down for a while and move on to something else. Like, I think one of the problems I struggle with personally is I'm never happy with my models. So I end up spending way too much time on like one guy, and then I never get a lot accomplished because I'm always redoing stuff, sometimes even stripping and redoing.
Right. So, yeah. There really isn't such a thing as a perfect model. I mean, so I don't recommend going back and futzing with them. I say go on to the next one. Try to improve on the next one if you want to get better.
Right. And then use those models as a way to look back. I think that's really cool.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much for stopping by.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John and Shoshie. Next up, we've got Tony Kopach with his perspective as a playtester for Warhammer 40,000 9th Edition.
Today's episode of 40K Today is brought to you by Frontline Gaming. Frontline Gaming is a one-stop shop for all your Warhammer hobby needs, discounted products, American-made gaming mats and terrain, and a full line of miniatures painting service and daily hobby content. And this can all be found at frontlinegaming.org.
Tony is a superstar in the tournament world and absolutely dominating on the tabletop. Let's hear what he's got to say.
Tony Kopach, thank you for joining us here on 40K Today. Super quick conversation today. Let's talk a little bit about all the point changes have sort of been, I guess the NDA has been lifted, so people are starting to talk about them.
Yeah, sure. I can touch on this briefly. So just, big goals for ninth, obviously, were that points had to go up. The units, the table got smaller, and we just wanted to have fewer models on the table. So that's the driving factor behind the points changes. Just reducing the total models on the table, less, 300, 400 models on the table at one time to play a 2,000 point game. So it's definitely one of the, the driving factors behind these changes. But otherwise, it was just trying to ensure that each unit's got, a bump where appropriate, and then, just launch the addition on that. But
yeah, so it kind of looks to me as a layman that they sort of in general, like you said, we're trying to get less units on the board. Let me ask you really quick. Did they also use this as an opportunity to maybe bring up some underplayed units and maybe bring down some overrepresented units, basically letting players sort of vote with what they play with as to what maybe is a little undercosted and a little overcosted? Did you see some of that?
I think for this, for this release, I think it was, again, like the primary focus, I think, was really just to get the points higher, get people adjusted to that. And I think moving forward, more of those factors will be taken, into account.
Right. So for chapter approved at Christmas this year, right? Then maybe we'll see a little.
Yeah, I mean, like chapter approved is always there. I know these point values are shocking for a lot of people. It's definitely a big adjustment, and I think raising points was always going to be a pretty huge adjustment. to get kind of to the values they wanted. So more of those balance tweaks will come down the road, and really, I think this is just the timing to kind of get this accomplished more than anything.
Yeah, and I think there's something else people need to consider too, right? If you compare points across codexes, it doesn't really tell the story. So a lot of people like to say, well, why are guardsmen, 5 points and cultists 6 points? And I think a lot of that is GW has a vision for how their armies are constructed, and the points values sometimes represent sort of how they see thematically the army, like they see in their mind's eye a horde of guardsmen, but they might not see chaos as a horde of cultists. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, right? Like, I think even like back in early 8th, when cultists were the Chaos Army, I don't even think the players necessarily thought that's what the army should be, right? Like, I think anytime that happens, like, people kind of realize it's maybe not the theme of the army or what people really want to see out of it. So I'm sure, like, with all of these, any opportunity to change points or to change units, they'll definitely factor in what should the army look like, essentially. So that can help account for some of the variance across armies, looking at a more internal perspective.
Right. And then I guess the other thing too is every codex is its own island, right? And so from a playtesting perspective, you're not really, when you're talking about points, you're talking about it within that army for each unit. What role does it play? What does it bring to the army versus you're not really saying, well, this and this army cost this points, so it should cost that's not really how it's done, right? It's more like within its island, it's got to make sense, not necessarily within the entire game, because there will be differences. Like certain armies are better at certain things, so they get those things for a little less points, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, when you're looking at, if you're just conceptually looking at the game and everything is kind of like identical across the board, that does eat into the point of having different armies, right? They do have different strengths, different weaknesses. And so, like, maybe an army is supposed to lean into like a horde element here where the other one isn't. And, even like for similar units, maybe it has to do with, just the way the army is supposed to play or the aesthetic with it. So it definitely can cause some variance, I think, cross book, where it's not always an apples to apples sort of situation.
All right. And then if I could ask you one last question before we go, what is your overall impression of 9th edition? Being a playtester, you've probably played more of it than any of us, and just give all the listeners sort of like your impression of 9th and where you think it's going and what you think of it.
Yeah. So I'll start it off with on like a basic level, it's going to look like 9th is a lot of small tweaks to 8th. But I think once you add up all of those little changes, even though the game looks familiar, it plays very differently, and it really is a brand new edition. It's not as much of an 8.5, I think, as people may have thought of it as. It's a brand new game. I think it requires a brand new outlook, and it really, I think, will develop into an edition that has its own unique feel. And overall, I'm actually very positive on it. I think a lot of the core rules changes really tightened up like oversights or some, maybe not intended things from 8th. And it gives players, it's going to give players a lot of opportunity to have a ton of fun with this edition as it matures.
Yeah, because there's going to be a lot of exploration, right? Because the game is significantly different, and I think mainly it's the missions and the terrain, right? They completely change how you interact with the game and win the game. So
absolutely, yeah, those are much more fleshed out sections of the game now. They're not left up for people to fill the gaps like ITC did previously. Like there is a mission pack now that everyone gets to play. There is terrain rules that everyone gets to use. So it is a very big unifying addition in that regard. It really puts everyone on the same playing field. Literally with all the terrain, even from an army construction perspective with detachments and CP. So it really gives everyone a common framework to work from.
All right. Well, you heard it here, folks. The future looks bright for the new edition of 40K. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. Thank you.
Tony, it is always great to hear from you. I hope we get to play again soon. We've had 2 segments. You know what time it is. It's time for that model of the day.
It's the model of the day. The model of the day. The the model of the day.
They always seem to give me the gross stuff. We got Toots _ fist _ full _ of _ paints. Yeah, I said all the underscores. On Instagram, bringing us a Death Guard champion, looking like the pre-Heresy color scheme. A little bit of white mixed in with the green from the Death Guard that we know and love. I think Death Guard are really going to see a resurgence on the tabletop, especially Plague Marines like this guy. You got to see with this guy the depth and the richness of the Plague and the decay and the armor, some rich brass colors with lots of patina, and then pretty much a scaly alien head, showing off lots of different styles, lots of different techniques. That's one of the reasons that Death Guard looks so great on the tabletop, and this is no exception. Check out the model of the day on our Facebook page, and check this painter out on Instagram. If you'd like your model featured in this segment, please use hashtag 40K today on Instagram and on Twitter. Thanks a lot. And just like that, we're done today. Thanks a lot for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow. This show is brought to you by an absolute team of superheroes. We've got Tanya Gates on social media, Alex Bainter on content production, and Seamus Ronan as our technical producer. For John, Steve, I'm Paul Murphy, and that's what's happening in 40K today.